This next part is one of the harder to understand concepts about Microsoft Excel, and that is absolute versus relative addressing. When you put in when you enter something into a cell, when you do a formula or whatnot, you use specific types of addressing. So, for example, a relative cell reference is when you reference a specific cell to see what that value is. So, for example, if I were in this cell here to reference this cell here, I would do equal B4. So when I go to equal B4, this should return that value here. So it will be 55,000. If I change this value to 50,000, this would change as well. And so is this. Okay, I'm still doing relative referencing here. When I ask for the cell of B4 through G4, I'm not asking for the sum of 50,000 plus 62,500 plus 67,000 plus 90,250 and so on. I'm asking for the sum of B4 through G4. Okay, so whenever I manipulate these values, my total may change. Same thing if I ask for a reference here. If I change these values because I'm referencing to the cell and not the number, this will change. Okay, so whenever I change this back, this will change as well. So we're going to go ahead and delete this. So that's relative cell referencing. Now, absolute cell referencing, it all comes down to when you start filling cells. When you fill cells, for example, for total, when I fill this down, you'll see the result as $0. Okay, that's because this formula, when you paste it down, when you fill it down, it will change based off the row it's on. Okay, so you'll see that 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 equals 0. Now, what would happen if I changed this to what it was an absolute cell reference? So how I would change to an absolute cell reference is I would select this number here. And I could do this in one of two ways. I can insert dollar signs before the column and before the row, or I could go on my keyboard and put and press F4 on the F keys. That will automatically change it to absolute cell references. Now, you're probably thinking, Mr. Felt, that makes absolute zero sense to me. But watch what happens. Okay? Yes, the result is the same. But what happens when we fill it down? It stays the same. So what that does is, when you click on this, it's almost frozen. Okay, we could fill this down forever and it's frozen. Okay, now I don't have to do absolute cell reference for both of these. I could just do it for one. So I'll put relative cell reference here, absolute cell reference here. When I fill this down, okay, it's going to change here. And you're like, wait a second, it's frozen. Well, oops. Hold on one second. I just messed up. Let me do this again. Okay. Alright, well, so if I changed any of these values though, say for example I changed here, it'll change. Okay? Because B4 stays the same, this one doesn't, so that changes. I'll give you another example. Oops. Another example, I'm going to kind of go off to the side here. Okay. 2, 2, 0, 2. We're going to do a product here. M4 times N4. That equals 4. Okay. Because these are relative cell references, if I move this down, it copies this formula down, so 2 times 0 equals 0. Now, if I change it to absolute cell referencing, if I just said M4 was relative and N4 is absolute, change F4, okay, it would be the same, 4. If I changed it for both, it would be the same because there's 2 2's. Now, if I change the numbers a little bit, let's say 3. Okay, we're going to change this back to relative. Okay, 2 times 2 equals 4. I put this down, 3 times 0 equals 0. Okay, that's true. What if I went ahead and changed M5 to M4? I'm sorry, this would be a bad example. Let me just do this. If I changed M4 to M5, changed N4 to absolute cell referencing, if I move this down, you'll see that is N4 stayed the same. We used M5 times N4 to get 6. Okay? If I changed both of these to absolute cell referencing, then I move this down and it's 4 because these are frozen. Okay, so enough of that. Now we're going to see it in application. So let's make sure here that there's no absolute cell references. We're good. Okay. So in the next video, you're going to see application of this as we start putting in some formulas.